Trying to place graphics on complex objects like scarves or other pieces of clothing that bend a lot or are very curved can be a bit challenging. So let me show you 3 tools in Photoshop to make life a whole lot easier. All right, so here I am in Photoshop, and I have this picture of a mannequin with a scarf around its neck. And so the first thing we're going to do before we move into the first tool is we have to make a selection of the scarf. And so to do that, I'm going to go over here to the object selection tool. You'll find it under quick selection. Just click object selection. And then I'm going to draw a very rough outline of this scarf. Photoshop will figure out what I'm trying to do. It doesn't have to be perfect. Let it do its thing, and then you'll see it selected part of the neck. So I'm going to hold Alt or Option on a Mac and just make a rough selection of that mannequin's neck. To deselect that, it's got a little bit more in there. Let's deselect that also. A little bit more. All right, and it missed some parts in here, so I'm going to want to draw around those to make sure those get selected. And there we go. I can click Q to get a quick view of that, and then I like that. So now with the object selection tool still active, we want to go into select and mask, and that's going to allow us to choose some output settings. So down here, we want to go to output settings and output to where do we want this selection to go. So right now it's just a selection, but we want to go down to new layer with a layer mask and click OK. So now we have this separate layer right here, original copy above our original layer, and it's just the scarf there. So I want to rename this to scarf. And that way, if I want to make any changes to selection, you can just go in there and, you know, make some changes. So actually, let's use Alt and let's deselect these parts in here because it's a little bit of that. And then output to layer mask. So boom, perfect, perfect. So that's looking great. So now that we have the scarf selected on its own layer, here's the first tip. So let's pull in a graphic. And actually, let's do something first. We're going to create a map. So basically, this map is going to allow us to bend any graphics to the shape of the object that's saved as a map. So I'll explain it as we go through it. So with this scarf layer selected, I'm going to right click it and I'm going to go to duplicate layer. Now, if you don't see the right click, like if you're on a Mac or something, you're just going to go to layer, duplicate layer, and you can keep it as the same. The document, I want a new document, and the name of it is going to be scarf map, and click OK. So it gives you this new document that's titled scarf map, and I want to press Control or Command S to save that, and I'm going to save it as scarf map. I already have it saved in here, so I'm just going to cancel this, but you can click save somewhere where you'll remember it, and then we can move on to the next step of our tutorial. So now I'm going to drag my graphic in, and I'm just going to place it here. You can also just Control C, Control V, or Command C, Command V on a Mac. Let's center that on the canvas. And the first tip is to just use blending modes. So a mode that would make this look a bit realistic would be to use multiply, which will just keep the darker parts of the layer and remove it from those lighter parts. So if I click multiply, you'll see it looks like it's a part of this scarf, but it's over the entire canvas. So what I want to do is to hold Alt or Option on a Mac and click between my graphic copy layer right here and my scarf layer. And you'll see once I hold the Alt key, this little corner arrow comes up. I just want to click that, and it'll just it'll constrain the layer so that it only appears over the scarf layer. So that's the first tip. As you can see, just with the multiply blending mode, that's already looking pretty good. But if we want it to be a little bit more realistic, we can do a few more things. So the second tip is to use blend if. So if we double click on this layer, or if you want to get to it manually, you can go to layer, blending options, I believe it is. Let's see, where are we at? Layer style, here we go, blending options, and that'll open this layer style dialog. So right under blending options, you'll see down here blend if gray. What we want to do is to remove the graphic from the shadows of the scarf layer, because what makes things look realistic for the most part is the light and the shadows of it. That's why graphics, when they look flat, when they don't have light and shadow, they don't have any dimension, so they don't look three-dimensional. Now, if this graphic was really part of this scarf or wrapped around this scarf, then you wouldn't see it in the parts that are dark or where the shadows are. And so that's what gives it its appearance of realism. So we want to remove the graphic on the parts of the scarf that are dark or the shadows. And so for that, we have blend if current layer or blend if underlying layer, which means the layers that lie under our graphic layer. So we want to remove it from the dark parts. You'll see these black colors, blacks and grays over here, and we have light grays and whites over here. And so I want to remove it from the dark places of the scarf. So I want to click and drag that. But of course, that's looking a bit harsh. So what I want to do is hold Alt or Option on the Mac and just click that to split it apart. And then I'm just going to drag it until I think it looks appropriate. So maybe they're starting to get a little too gray. So maybe like right there. And maybe I'll drag this over some, or I may just leave it. The left slider. Yeah, maybe right there. And I'm going to click OK. And let's see the before and after. So here's the before and here's the after. It just gives it a little more something. You may think it looks better even without that, but a lot of times that'll work by itself in helping you with things. So, and as you can see with the blend if, even if I were to change this back to normal, you still get kind of a sense of that blending cut just because of the blend if. But anyway, we're going to keep it on multiply. And the last thing we're going to do is we want the shape of the graphic to kind of bend and mold into the shape of that scarf. And so what we're going to do as the last tip is to go to Filter, Distort, and Displace. And we're going to use that map that we created earlier. So it's the horizontal shift and vertical, the horizontal and vertical scale is going to control how much it's distorted by. I'm just going to use the default 25 by 25 because if you distort it too much, it'll start to look weird. But I'm going to click on OK, keep all the settings the same, and I'm going to go to OK. And then I'm going to click that scarf map that I created earlier. So I'm going to click on that and just click open, or you can double click it. Okay, let's try that again, double click it. And there you go. Now it's a very slight change. You might not have noticed it, but if I click on this eyeball next to the displace filter, here's the before and here's the after. You see it'll start to bend after the shape of the scarf. And again, you may think it looks better without it, or you may want to reduce the amount of distortion. I'm going to do 10 by 10 and maybe something like that looks a little better. And so there you have it. Those are 3 tools that you can use. Just to recap. So the first thing we did was to make a selection of our scarf layer, and then we dragged in our graphic. We changed the blending mode to multiply. We created a clipping mask so that the graphic was only showing over the scarf layer. And then we changed the blending mode to multiply, and then we double clicked in there and we used blending options to remove our graphic from the underlying layer, the dark parts of the underlying layer with blend if. And then lastly, we used the distort displace filter just to bend and mold it after the shape of the scarf. Now, if you're an advanced user, you may want to go into tools like the warp tool. The liquefy tool, which can give you some really crazy results if you're really trying to go after it. But that'll be a tutorial for another time. So if this tutorial has been helpful to you, be sure to leave a like and comment below how your if this video helped you and how you're going to be using this in your own graphics. And if you want to see more tutorials like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button. But until then, take chances, make mistakes, and create something incredible. God bless.